I lost my job after giving birth to my baby. And my baby daddy is a no-good, rotten, addicted gambler. I was struggling, so I took up the offer to work for a distant relative's restaurant, only to be treated badly. I had plans after high school. I was meant to gain admission into college. That was the plan. However, as fate would have it, that wasn't exactly what happened. It was the last few weeks before high school exams, and while some of my friends were preparing for college, I decided to take a gap year. I felt that it was needed to prepare me for the next 4 to 5 years ahead. I needed to clear my head, and I felt it was necessary to have some fun before I started a stressful college era. My parents did not really approve of it, but then they felt taking a year off before college wasn't so bad. I had so much fun during that gap year, but I also became extremely reckless. I became acquainted with one of my male friends from high school, who actually did not have any plans to further college. We became really intimate. We shared memories together. 5 months into the gap year, I decided to take a job. In order to prepare for college, I might as well save up some money. My job was pretty flexible, 4 days in a week, 6 hours per day, and I earned a lot from it. A month before the end of my gap year, I discovered that I was pregnant. I'd been feeling quite woozy for some weeks before that, and it was felt that it was just best to get a pregnancy test kit. I was scared out of my mind with the thought that I might be pregnant. I was 80% assured that it would be negative, but oh, I was wrong. The test was positive. I sat on my bathroom door with the positive test strip to hand. All my dreams were shattered. Hopes, aspirations. My gap year failed me. That's what I thought at the moment. I was about 4 weeks pregnant at the time. I did not even realize on time I told my boyfriend about it, and could see the sadness in his eyes. He did try not to make me feel bad, though, but he did not condemn the pregnancy, but his body language spoke it all. Yeah, I had the baby months after, but the responsibilities that came with taking care of a child made me lose my child. I couldn't nurse a child and keep my job at the same time. However, I did need the money. I needed the money more than ever. I couldn't exactly get the money from anywhere else either. My father of my child was not supportive. He was a gambler and spent most of his days just gambling away any money that he had. I needed to do something because my parents weren't supportive either. They weren't happy at the fact that I got knocked up during my service year, so they left all the child responsibilities. In fact, I had to leave my parents' house just to stay with a female friend of mine, who got an apartment to herself shortly after high school. I could not endure the complaints my mother rained on me daily when I was pregnant. It's not like they sent me away or something, but their hostility towards me just showed that I needed to move. And they weren't even against it. 6 months after childbirth, and it was quite evident that I needed a job. Although my parents were hostile towards me, but they still reached out to me once in a while. I told my dad over the phone one time that I was completely out of cash, and then instead of helping me with any cash he got, he told me that he could get a job for me. Well, a few days later, I got a call back from him that his cousin had a restaurant somewhere in town and was looking for vacancy. He had already told his cousin about me, and she would be expecting me in just a few days. I was grateful to my dad for getting me a job, but honestly at the time, I would have appreciated it if he just supported me with some cash. Because, well, I was skeptical how I'm supposed to carry on with a job while also taking care of a 6-month-old. At least that's why I lost my other job in the first instance. I resumed work some few days later, and even though everything seemed fine, I sensed that something was off somewhere. My aunt and her husband were really accommodating, but they had this 18-year-old daughter who seemed to be trouble. The daughter, June, had not gained admission into the university at the time. In fact, she also took a gap year like me, but I feared that she wasn't even interested in college. I loved my job and the pay was alright, but sometimes I wondered why I was employed. June was not occupied with any other thing and she mostly came by the restaurant. She could have been helping with her parents' business, but for some reason, best known to her, she decided not to do so. June would come by the restaurant every morning, ask what was currently on the menu, then help herself with some of the dishes. She was the daughter of the restaurant owner, so I definitely could not stop her from getting free meals. My aunt wasn't always around, so most of the time, I'd have to explain to my aunt how the day's money wasn't complete, because her daughter literally fed off the restaurant. June did not really make things better, though. She would not own up to her actions at the restaurant. One day, she came over to just grab a meal that was almost worth $15. My aunt strictly took note of the dishes available in the restaurant every money, so you would know what dollar was cut short. I explained to my aunt that her daughter had taken something worth $15, and when she called her daughter for explanations, this lady lied in my face and said that she was not even up to $4. I felt like a fool, a liar, the way my aunt looked at me like I betrayed her. I was tongue-tied even when I knew her daughter was a liar. It came down to this. Who would my aunt believe? Her daughter or her distant niece she knew nothing about? Of course she would believe and support her daughter. The little lady wasn't just my aunt's daughter, she was a spoiled brat. She literally got whatever she wanted, so it was quite difficult to go against her. June refused to get a job, and I mean it. Absolutely refused. Her basic excuse was that she was still going to college and doesn't need a job before then. After all, her mother's restaurant business is thriving. What did she need a job for? This was her normal reaction. Well, things got worse when I started to notice that the daily sales money wasn't exactly complete anymore. Yes, June would come by the restaurant every hour and then just get some free meals, which she would deny at the end. But money missing directly from the register box was another situation entirely. I watched as the money in the register box got missing every day. I also watched as some meals were being unaccounted for in the kitchen. There was no one else that had access to the register box and kitchen except my aunt, her daughter, me, and one other staff who I was very sure had nothing to do with the robbery. It was the day I sat down to think about this, that had access to the kitchen, that it dawned on me that June might be the one behind the stealings. She's definitely had the traits. It was something she was capable of, but being a spoiled brat as she was, it was difficult to tell on her. And with no proof at all, good luck. Well, the day I caught June stealing from the kitchen was the time I had ordered some ingredients for a special delicacy. This particular client specifically requested for the meal, which was quite expensive. I just fried the chicken, which was a bit much, and I went out for like 30 minutes to get something else to complete the ingredients. I didn't look up the restaurant, even though no one was at the moment there, because the other staff just promised to come in before I came back from my errand. However, exactly 30 minutes after, I went back to the restaurant, only to see June stuffing her back with some chicken and putting some in her mouth. The total lack of disregard for her mother's business. She didn't even care to know who the meal was meant for. I dashed into the kitchen to confront her, but there was no hint of remorse on her face. She did drop the chicken leg, at least what was left of it. I couldn't get to the customer anymore, so I had to get another one. However, that affected the restaurant, and eventually I had to pay for the chicken out of my pocket. In fact, when I told her mother about it, there seemed to be no surprise or disgust for her daughter on my aunt's face. June had already told her mom about it, but completely twisted the story. She told her mother that I accused her of stealing some freshly made chicken, when the chicken was actually some leftover from the customer table. That definitely wasn't true, but my aunt would not believe me. She accused me of putting false claims on her daughter. She also said that even if the chicken were not leftover ones, I shouldn't have carelessly placed them in a place where anyone could easily reach them. She wasn't even calm with the fact that I left the store. My aunt threatened to fire me. My child was hardly a year old, and I needed the money so bad. My friends already tried for me a whole lot for babysitting my baby boy almost all the time. I could not place too much more burden on her. I tried my best to tread carefully within the next couple of months. I did not want my aunt to see any reason to fire me. It was quite difficult for me to get another job, especially when I had a baby with no college degree. Sometimes I wish I had not taken that gap year. I loved my son so much, but then even he would have wanted me to have a more fulfilling life. One particular evening, after having lots of customers come by, I went to the restroom just to ease myself. I came back to meet the register completely vandalized. Every cash in it's been stolen, and the other staffs have gone home immediately after the last customer left. For some reason, I knew almost immediately that June had something to do with it. I went over to my aunt's place and went straight to June's room. But she wasn't there. I went back to the restaurant and met my aunt there. "You didn't call me to tell me that you had withdrawn every cash from the register, Alice. Were you hoping to keep today's sales for yourself?" my aunt asked in a sarcastic manner. I was tongue-tied. I didn't know how to explain to her that the money's been stolen. Worse, that I think it was her daughter. I sat down on one of the customer seats in the restaurant. My aunt slowly walked towards me and sat behind me. "Where's my money, Alice?" my aunt asked. I couldn't say anything until she yelled once more, and I stuttered right before I told her, "It's been stolen." The keys had not been in my possession since the day the chicken accident happened, so my aunt was literally accusing me of breaking into the box to steal the money for myself. A few minutes after my aunt confronted me, June casually strolls in. I looked straight at her, ready to pounce. Once again, the spoiled child had done something menacing. I asked her if she came into the restaurant the hour before the money got vandalized, but then it was obvious that I was accusing getting in front of my aunt. My aunt would not have any of it. According to her, I was to be held accountable because I was the last person who was in the restaurant when the incident happened. June suggested that the other workers should be involved. My aunt called them, and both showed up at the restaurant within 20 minutes. My aunt then went towards everyone's locker to check for any signs of proof. I was quite confident because I had nothing to do with it. Well, confident, until my aunt pulled a key from my locker. The cash register key. I was stunned. Didn't know how that got there. I wasn't even given room to explain myself. I was immediately fired, no questions asked. I knew June had something to do with it, but my aunt did not like the fact that I called her daughter a thief. In fact, she called my parents right away to tell them what I've done. My parents said they had no words for me, absolutely no words, and that my aunt should do whatever had to be done. That was a terrible day for me, because that's when I needed the job the most. There was this event coming up, so I needed money. I knew that a lot of money would be made from the event that would be hosted at the restaurant. I had made so much plans for the event. I was invested in it, and my aunt knew about it. June literally ruined my chance of getting the next stage of my life done. There were several influential folks that had booked for the event. I was going to probably get a better business offer from it, but my aunt and June just had to ruin it. Well, I left the restaurant that day. Completely shattered, no hope on how I'd get the money to feed my kid or even another job. The next day, I decided to reach out to my baby daddy, once again, to ask him for funds when a call came through. It was my aunt. I was quite hesitant to pick up, but my friend urged me to do so. So I said, "What?" I asked her shakingly. "June, I really need your help over here. The restaurant's been burnt down." Well, I was a bit confused, because I didn't know how any of that was my business. It wasn't like I was the one who burnt the restaurant down. So I asked my aunt why she needed my help. Then she explained to me how an angry customer had burnt down the restaurant the night before, because June stole from him. Guess this time June had been finally caught red-handed. My aunt and June, they simply needed a place to stay for a while because the angry customer was on their tail. There was absolutely no reason why I should help my aunt and June. These people hardly treated me like family. In fact, my aunt had called my parents not too long ago to tell them how bad I was. And now they needed my help. I could not bring them over to my friend's place while I was working with them. They didn't even bother to know where I lived. The funniest part was that I actually knew the customer was talking about. With the way my aunt described him, he had been to the restaurant a few times and we were pretty good friends. It's quite easy for me to reach out to the customer just to beg on their behalf. But I wouldn't do that because my aunt did not exactly deserve it. My parents even called me, suggested that I helped, but they would even accommodate my aunt. Because they didn't want to put themselves at risk, they said no way are they getting involved. That just showed that they would rather put me at risk than themselves. I left my aunt alone to handle her mess. At least I wasn't welcome in their lives anymore. A few days later, I heard that my aunt lost the restaurant. The insurance company would not cover the expenses because they didn't believe that a customer set the restaurant ablaze. Word went around town after that. The owner was reckless and did not close the stoves properly, and this resulted in a gas leak. My aunt lost her place and also could not stay at her place of residence, but that was none of my business. I got a job about 2 weeks later. Apparently, my friend had sent my CV to a 5-star restaurant in town. I was employed almost immediately. Let me just tell ya, the pay, it was quite good. In fact, what I'm saying is, the pay was awesome. Triple the amount my aunt offered. Finally, I can go to college after a while and start a new life. I thought my life was over, but it's just beginning. It's time for a similar situation story. This was one of the top comments, and it says this. I can't help but think about this story, and when I was working at a retail company, there was this known Karen that comes into the store. Well, she came in one day. She was late. She wanted the 45% off sale that we were having yesterday, and she demanded to get the same deal. I tried explaining to her, "Ma'am, it's not my decision. The computer locks in the prices automatically last night, and it's all up to the system for the discount." Well, guys, LOL. She wasn't having it. She proceeded to rip every single piece of clothing in her area with a pocket knife that she had in her pocket, yelling and screaming bloody murder. It took the cops over 20 minutes to respond, which still doesn't make sense to this day, because they literally have 3 cops stationed at this mall. But whatever. She was arrested and banned from the store forever. Man, some people and bosses just can be absolutely insane. So guys, I have one question for you. Drop your similar situation stories, and if you have one, which one was your craziest? That's all the stories for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Also, a little bit of news. I started a new Instagram channel. This one's going to be the official Mr. Redito Instagram. It's going to have behind the scenes, a little look into my life, and also 60-second videos, 60-second stories. Exciting news, guys. You can find that right down in the description, and also I'll pop up on screen what it looks like. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Have a wonderful day, and Mr. Redito will see you in the next one.